The warning came too late. Captain Lee Hyun stood on the bridge of the colony ship Indomitable Spirit, watching the planet grow larger on the main screen. Below them, Kepler 442b spun like a wounded animal. Dark storms covered half the world. Lightning flashed through clouds that looked more like poison than water vapor. The planet's surface showed scars where the ground had been twisted and broken by forces no world should survive. "Sir, we're getting another transmission from the Velthari station," said Communications Officer Yoon Tai-ho. His voice carried the same tension that filled the entire bridge. Behind them, 40,000 humans slept in the colony pods, trusting their leaders to find them a new home. "Put it through," Lee Hyun said. He had been expecting this call. The screen flickered, and Ambassador Zethrak appeared. The Velthari looked like a cross between a lizard and a bird, with scales that changed color when he was upset. Right now, those scales were flashing bright red. "Captain Lee Hyun," Zethrak said, his translator making his words sound flat and cold. "You must turn your ships around. This world is cursed. It has killed 7 different species who tried to live here. Your people will die if you land." Lee Hyun studied the alien's face. The Velthari had ruled this part of space for over 1,000 years. They knew things about survival that humans were still learning. But they also knew things about giving up that humans had never learned. "We appreciate your concern, Ambassador," Lee Hyun said, "but we've studied the planet data. We're going ahead with the landing." Zethrak's scales turned an even brighter red. "You do not understand. This world breaks minds. The storms have winds that move faster than your ships can fly. The gravity changes without warning and can crush your bones. The air will burn your lungs. We lost 12,000 colonists here 300 years ago. The Kethamori lost 8,000. The others, we stopped counting." Dr. Park So-jin stepped forward from her position at the science station. She was a small woman with quick eyes who had spent her life studying impossible places. "Ambassador, what exactly makes this world so dangerous?" "Everything," Zethrak said. His scales were now cycling through colors so fast, they looked like a rainbow of panic. "The planet's core is unstable. It creates gravity wells that appear and disappear. The atmosphere is filled with acids that eat through our best metals. The storms never stop, and they carry rocks the size of your ships. The temperature can change 50 degrees in minutes. The magnetic field shifts randomly and will cook anything electronic." Park So-jin nodded as if the alien was describing a pleasant vacation spot. "What about the mineral deposits?" "Incredible," Zethrak admitted. "The gravity changes create elements that exist nowhere else. But they are impossible to mine. The moment you try to dig, the ground either collapses or shoots into the sky. And the water? Toxic, acidic. It will dissolve your equipment and poison your people." Park So-jin smiled. "Thank you, Ambassador. That's very helpful information." Zethrak stared at her as if she had just thanked him for telling her that fire was hot. "You still plan to land?" "Of course," said Commander Nayunbi from the tactical station. She was a former military officer who had volunteered for colony duty because she was bored with easy assignments. "It sounds challenging." "Challenging?" Zethrak's translator seemed to struggle with the word. "This world has claimed more lives than the 3 greatest wars in Velthari history. It is not challenging. It is death." Lee Hyun looked at his senior staff. Engineer Kim Do-woo was running calculations on his tablet, probably figuring out how to build structures that could survive the gravity changes. Pilot Lim De-hai was studying the storm patterns, looking for ways to fly through them. Medical Officer Oh-se-ra was reviewing the atmospheric data, working out what kind of filters their people would need. None of them looked worried. They looked excited. "Ambassador," Lee Hyun said, "we understand your concerns. But humans have lived through ice ages, volcanic winters, meteor impacts, and worse. We've built cities in deserts, on ice sheets, and underwater. We've learned to farm in places where nothing should grow and to find water where none should exist. This is different," Zethrak insisted. "This world fights back. It seems almost alive in its hatred for visitors. Then we'll have to be more stubborn than it is, said Chief Engineer Kang In-soo from his position near the environmental controls. He was a man who had built bridges across rivers that flooded every year and tunnels through mountains that shifted with earthquakes. We're good at being stubborn. Zethrak was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his scales had faded to a pale yellow that the humans had learned meant confusion. Your species puzzles us, Captain. We have studied your records. Earth is classified as a death world by galactic standards. Most species would have been extinct within 1,000 years of evolution there. Yet you not only survived, you thrived. And now you seek out other death worlds. Home is where you make it, Lee Hyun said, and we make it wherever we need to. The Galactic Council will want to observe your attempt, Zethrak said. They believe it will provide valuable data on human limitations. They're welcome to watch, Lee Hyun said. We'll try to put on a good show. The transmission ended, and the bridge was quiet except for the hum of the ship's engines. Through the viewport, Kepler 442b continued its violent dance, storms raging across continents, lightning splitting the sky. Landing site recommendations? Lee Hyun asked. Engineer Kim Do-woo looked up from his calculations. The southern continent has the most stable gravity readings, still dangerous but manageable. There's a valley between two mountain ranges that might give us some protection from the worst storms. Mineral access? Asked Park So-jin. Excellent. The gravity fluctuations have pushed rare elements close to the surface. We should be able to mine them once we figure out the patterns. Water sources? 3 rivers run through the valley. Highly acidic, but we can work with that. We've processed worse. Lee Hyun nodded. Behind him, the colony ship's New Soul, Perseverance, and Second Chance maintained formation. Each carried 10,000 people who had left Earth, not because they had to, but because they wanted to build something new in a place where others had failed. Begin landing preparations, he ordered. All department heads, I want detailed plans for the first 6 months. We're not just going to survive down there. We're going to build a home. As the ships began their descent toward the storm-wrapped world, Lee Hyun thought about the 7 species that had tried and failed to tame this planet. They had seen obstacles. Humans saw opportunities. The difference, he knew, would matter. The first landing almost killed them all. The shuttle Pioneer shook like a leaf in a hurricane as pilot Lim De-hai fought to keep it steady. Outside the windows, the wind howled at 400 miles per hour, carrying rocks the size of cars. The gravity kept changing, making the shuttle feel heavy 1 second and weightless the next. Gravity spike coming in 30 seconds, warned engineer Kim Do-woo from his seat. He was strapped in so tight he could barely breathe, but his hands never stopped working on his tablet. It's going to be a big one. How big? De-hai asked through gritted teeth. 3 times normal gravity. Everyone on the shuttle pressed back into their seats as the gravity wave hit. For 10 seconds, they weighed 3 times more than they should. The shuttle's frame groaned under the pressure. Then, just as suddenly, they were light again. Landing. Zone in sight, De-hai announced. Through the storm, they could see a flat area between 2 hills. It wasn't much, but it was the best they were going to get. The shuttle hit the ground hard. The landing gear bent but held. Outside, the wind screamed around them, but they were down. Welcome to paradise, muttered Medico Seira as she unstrapped herself. Through the shuttle's thick windows, they could see their new home. The ground was a strange blue-gray color, covered with rocks that seemed to glow with their own light. The sky was a dirty yellow, filled with clouds that moved too fast and flashed with lightning that was the wrong color. In the distance, mountains rose, like broken teeth, their peaks lost in the poisonous atmosphere. It's beautiful, said Dr. Park So-jin, and she meant it. Within 6 hours, the first habitat pod was being assembled. The humans had learned from the failures of the 7 species who had tried before them. Instead of fighting the planet's strange gravity, engineer Kim Do-woo designed buildings that could bend and flex. The walls were made from a flexible metal that could stretch without breaking. The foundations were built on springs and joints that could move with the gravity changes. The gravity spikes follow a pattern, Kim Do-woo explained to the construction team as they worked. Every 43 minutes, there's a small one. Every 4 hours, there's a medium one. Every 18 hours, there's a big one. We just have to time our work around them. Construction foreman Yoon Tai-ho, who had spent 20 years building oil rigs in Earth's worst oceans, nodded. We've worked in worse conditions. Remember the North Sea project during the storm season? The construction crew laughed. They were a mix of former deep-sea welders, high-altitude construction workers, and people who had built settlements in Earth's polar regions. To them, this was just another day at a difficult job site. Dr. Park So-jin was working on the atmosphere. Problem: the air outside was so acidic it could eat through most metals in hours. But Park had spent her career studying extremophile bacteria, tiny life forms that thrived in conditions that should kill them. The answer isn't to keep the bad air out, she explained to her team as they set up the first air processing plant. The answer is to change the bad air into good air. She had brought bacteria from Earth's deepest ocean vents, places where the water was hot enough to melt metal and filled with chemicals that were toxic to most life. Those bacteria ate the poisonous gases and produced oxygen as waste. We're not fighting the planet's atmosphere, Park said as the first clean air began flowing into the habitat. We're teaching it to work for us. Commander Na Yunbi was dealing with the storms. The winds on this planet never stopped blowing, and they carried everything from dust to boulders. Most species had tried to hide from the storms or build walls to keep them out. The humans had a different idea. We're going to surf them, Na announced at the evening briefing. The plan was simple but crazy. Instead of building permanent structures, they would build mobile ones. When a big storm came, they would pack up their most important equipment and ride the storm to a better location. The storms followed predictable paths, and some of those paths led to areas rich in the rare minerals they needed. The Velthari tried to fight the storms, Na explained. The Keth-Mori tried to hide from them. We're going to dance with them. Agricultural specialist Choi Mi-young was working on the food problem. The soil was toxic, the water was acidic, and the radiation from the planet's unstable core would kill most Earth plants. But Mi-young had brought seeds from plants that grew in Earth's most impossible places. These wheat varieties were developed for the Sahara Desert, she said, as she planted the first crops in specially treated soil. These potatoes were designed for Arctic conditions. These vegetables were made to grow in salt water. She also brought fish that could live in water so polluted it glowed, and insects that ate radiation and turned it into protein. The first greenhouse was a strange place, filled with plants and animals that looked like they belonged in a science fiction movie. Food doesn't have to be pretty, Mi-young said, as she watched the first green shoots push through the alien soil. It just has to keep us alive while we figure out how to make this place more like home. Within 2 weeks, the first human settlement was taking shape. The Velthari observation post watched in amazement as the humans not only survived, but began to thrive. They are using the gravity changes to help them move heavy equipment, reported observer Kethyan to his superiors. When the gravity drops, they lift large construction beams. When it increases, they use the extra weight to drive foundation posts deeper into the ground. Ambassador Zethrak could hardly believe the reports. What about the toxic atmosphere? They are converting it to breathable air using some kind of biological process. Their air is actually cleaner than ours. The storms? They appear to be enjoying them. Yesterday, some of their young adults went outside during a minor storm and used the wind to help them move building materials. They were laughing. Zethrak's scales turned the pale yellow of confusion. In 300 years of observing different species, he had never seen anything like this. By the end of the first month, the human settlement had grown to include 50 buildings, 3 greenhouses, 2 mining operations, and a small factory that was producing tools from the planet's strange minerals. The population had grown to 300 as more shuttles arrived from the colony ships. But what amazed the Velthari observers most was what the humans did in their free time. Instead of resting in the safety of their habitats, they went outside to explore. They climbed the unstable mountains, swam in the acidic rivers wearing protective suits, and collected samples of rocks that changed color with the gravity fluctuations. They treat this death world like a playground, observer Kethyan reported. The children were the most surprising of all. Born on the colony ships, they had never seen a stable environment. To them, gravity that changed and storms that never ended were normal. They adapted faster than their parents, learning to predict when gravity spikes were coming and how to move safely during the worst weather. The young ones can sense gravity changes 30 seconds before our instruments detect them, reported Dr. Park So-jin in her weekly log. They're also showing increased bone density and improved balance. It's as if their bodies are adapting to the conditions in real time. By the end of the second month, the settlement had a name, New Busan. It had its own government, its own school, and its own local newspaper. The headlines were unlike anything published anywhere else in the galaxy. Storm season brings record mineral harvest. Local students set new records in gravity surfing. New restaurant opens, specializes in radiation grown. Vegetables ambassador Zethrak read these headlines with growing disbelief. This world had broken 7 civilizations. It had claimed hundreds of thousands of lives. Yet the humans were not just surviving, they were building a community. Request permission to visit the human settlement, he transmitted to his superiors. Denied, came the reply. Too dangerous. Zethrak looked at his monitors, which showed human children playing in what his instruments registered as lethal environmental conditions. They were not just alive, they were laughing. For the first time in his long career as a diplomat, Zethrak began to wonder if his species had been approaching the problem of hostile worlds entirely wrong. The delegation arrived 6 months after the first human landing. 3 ships approached New Busan carrying representatives from the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. The Velthari brought their best scientists. The crystalline Kethmori sent their finest engineers. The gas-dwelling Nithalan brought their most skilled observers. They came expecting to study human failure. Instead, they found something that challenged everything they thought they knew about survival. Ambassador Zethrak stepped off his shuttle into what his instruments told him was a lethal environment. But the human escort, community leader Han Wu Jin, wore only light clothing and a simple breathing mask. "Welcome to New Busan," Han said cheerfully. Behind him, human children played in a park where the gravity changed every few minutes. They had turned the gravity shifts into a game, jumping high when it was low and doing strength exercises when it was high. "How are you alive?" asked crystalline observer Vexthai. Her voice came through a translation device since Kethmori communicated, through light patterns. "Our instruments show this environment should kill carbon-based life forms within minutes." "Oh, you mean the atmosphere?" Han laughed. "Dr. Park solved that problem months ago. Would you like to see the processing plants?" The delegation followed Han through the settlement. What they saw made no sense according to their understanding of colonization. Instead of sealed domes protecting the inhabitants from the hostile environment, the humans had built open structures that seemed to invite the dangerous conditions inside. "This is our main residential area," Han explained as they walked past buildings that flexed and swayed with the gravity changes. "The walls are designed to move with the planet's moods." Scientist Bae Junho met them at the Atmospheric Processing Center. He was a thin man with quick hands who spoke like he was excited about everything he saw. "The key was understanding that we don't need to fight the planet's chemistry," he explained. "We just need to work with it." He showed them tanks full of bacteria that ate the poisonous gases and produced clean air. Other tanks contained algae that thrived in the acidic water and produced fresh drinking water as a byproduct. "These organisms come from Earth's most extreme environments," Bae said. "Deep ocean vents, volcanic springs, polar ice. Earth taught us that life finds a way to survive anywhere." Vexthai's light patterns showed confusion. "But these are primitive, biological methods. Where is your advanced technology?" "This is our advanced technology," Bae replied. "We learned that the most sophisticated solutions are often the simplest ones." The delegation was taken to the mining operations next. Engineer Kim Do-woo showed them how humans had learned to work with the gravity fluctuations instead of against them. "When gravity drops, we can lift massive equipment with minimal effort," he explained as a crew moved a 10-ton processor using only hand tools. "When gravity spikes, we use the extra weight to drive mining shafts deeper than any machine could manage." The Nithalan observer, a being made of living gas called Whisper Wind, was amazed. Your species uses the planet's hostility as a tool? Everything here can be used for something, Kim replied. The acid rain, we collect it for metal processing. The lightning storms, free electricity. The toxic minerals, they make incredibly strong building materials once you learn how to work with them. Medic Osira took the delegation to the medical center, where they saw something that shocked them even more than the engineering solutions. Human children born on the planet were not just surviving the hostile conditions, they were thriving in ways that seemed impossible. This is Youngsu, O said, introducing a 6-month-old baby. He was born during a gravity storm. His bone density is 30% higher than Earth normal, and his reflexes are incredibly fast. She showed them brain scans of children who had been born on New Busan. Their neural patterns showed adaptations that allowed them to predict gravity changes and navigate the dangerous environment with ease. They can sense when a gravity spike is coming minutes before our instruments detect it, O explained. Their bodies are adapting to the environment in real time. Ambassador Zethrak stared at the medical data. This is impossible. Adaptation takes generations, not months. Not for humans, O replied. We're very good at adapting quickly. We had to be. Earth tried to kill us for millions of years. The delegation was taken to the school next, where they witnessed something that would haunt their dreams for years. Human children were being taught subjects that sounded like advanced survival training to the alien observers. Today we're learning about storm prediction, announced teacher Kim Hae-jin to a class of 8-year-olds. Who can tell me what the cloud color means when it shifts from yellow to green? A small girl raised her hand. Gravity storm coming. Time to play heavy tag. The children cheered and ran outside to play a game that involved trying to move normally, while the planet's gravity shifted randomly. To them, it was fun. To the watching aliens, it looked like military training. What do you teach them about? Safety? Asked Whisperwind. We teach them that safety comes from understanding, not from hiding, Kim replied. These children will grow up knowing how to read the planet's moods better than any computer. That evening, the delegation was invited to what the humans called a community dinner. The entire settlement gathered in a large hall where the walls were transparent, showing the toxic storms raging outside. Researcher John Hyejin stood up to give a presentation about their first 6 months on the planet. Her findings would later become required reading in alien academic institutions. We've discovered that human psychology is fundamentally different from other species when it comes to environmental challenges, she began. Where others see obstacles, we see puzzles to solve. Where others see danger, we see excitement, she showed data comparing human stress responses to those of other species. When faced with hostile conditions, most species experience fear and shutdown responses. Humans experience something we call challenge arousal. We become more alert, more creative, and more determined. Vexithai's light patterns flickered with disbelief. You are saying that danger makes your species perform better? Exactly, John replied. Earth taught us that comfort is temporary, but adaptability is forever. Every challenge we've faced as a species has made us stronger. She explained how Earth had experienced ice ages, meteor impacts, volcanic winters, and massive climate changes. Other species evolved in stable environments. We evolved in chaos. It's made us very good at dealing with chaos. The presentation continued with examples of human achievements on New Busan. They had not only survived in conditions that had killed 7 other species, they had prospered. The settlement was already producing surplus food, valuable minerals, and even art inspired by the planet's dangerous beauty. But why? Asked Ambassador Zethrak. Why choose to live in such conditions when you could find easier worlds? Captain Lee Hyun, who had been quiet throughout the dinner, finally spoke. Because easy worlds don't teach you anything. Our children won't grow up soft and dependent. They'll grow up strong and capable. This planet will make them better humans than any safe world could. He gestured toward the storm outside. Every generation of humans has faced some kind of challenge that seemed impossible. Ice ages, plagues, wars, disasters. We're still here because we learned that running away doesn't solve problems. It just delays them. The delegation left new, Busan 3 days later with their understanding of the universe fundamentally changed. They had come expecting to document another failed colonization attempt. Instead, they had witnessed the birth of a new type of human, one adapted to conditions that would kill most known life forms. Send this message to the Galactic Council, Ambassador Zethrak transmitted to his ship as they departed. We have discovered why humans expand into territories that other species consider uninhabitable. They do not seek to survive hostile environments. They seek to be improved by them. He paused, watching New Busan shrink behind them. Even from orbit, they could see the lights of the growing settlement, bright against the planet's dark storms. Recommendation: all species should observe human expansion with great interest and respect. They may be the first species we have encountered that become stronger through adversity rather than weaker. Below them, in the settlement that 7 species had called impossible, human children played in gravity storms while their parents planned the next phase of expansion. They were not just surviving on a world that broke others, they were turning it into home. The planet tried to kill them all on a Tuesday. It started with the deep tremors that engineer Kim Do-woo felt through the soles of his feet while he was checking the mining equipment. The vibrations were wrong, not the regular pulse of the gravity, fluctuations they had learned to live with, but something deeper and angrier. All teams report status, he spoke into his radio. Around him, the mining site was operating normally. Workers moved with the practiced ease of people who had learned to function in conditions that would paralyze most species. Gravity sensors are going crazy, reported technician Lee Min-ho from the monitoring station. The patterns are completely broken. I'm seeing readings that don't make sense. Within an hour, it became clear that something fundamental had changed in the planet's core. The gravity fluctuations that had followed predictable patterns for months suddenly became random and violent. Equipment that had been designed to flex with the changes was being twisted apart by forces 3 times stronger than anything they had prepared for. The atmospheric processors are failing, Dr. Park So-jin reported from the main settlement. Her voice was calm, but Captain Lee Hyun could hear the concern underneath. The increased gravity is crushing the bacterial cultures faster than they can reproduce. The emergency began at 14:30 local time, when a gravity spike hit the main residential area with the force of a bomb. Buildings that had survived dozens of previous spikes suddenly found themselves under pressure that bent their flexible frames past the breaking point. Evacuation protocols now, ordered Commander Naunbi over the settlement-wide communication system. But her next word surprised the alien observers who were monitoring from their orbiting stations. All civilians to the storm shelters, all essential personnel to emergency stations. We're not abandoning the settlement. The Velthari monitoring station immediately began broadcasting evacuation offers. Human settlement, this is Ambassador Zethrak. We can have evacuation ships to your location within 4 hours. Begin immediate preparation for planetary departure. The response came from pilot Lim Dahai, who was flying supply runs between the collapsing buildings. Thanks for the offer, Ambassador, but we're not leaving. We've got work to do. What the aliens witnessed over the next 18 hours challenged everything they thought they knew about intelligent behavior in crisis situations. Chief Engineer Kang In-soo led a team into the most dangerous area of the settlement, where the gravity fluctuations were strongest. Instead of trying to escape the crushing forces, they worked to understand them. The new pattern isn't random, he reported after 6 hours of measurements taken while buildings collapsed around him. It's just more complex. There's a rhythm here, but it operates on a longer cycle. While most species would have retreated to safety, Kang's team stayed in the danger zone, taking readings and making calculations. They discovered that the planet's core had shifted into a new configuration that created gravity patterns operating on 12-hour cycles instead of the previous 18-hour ones. We can work with this, Kang announced. We just need to redesign our timing. Agricultural specialist Choi Mi-young faced a different crisis. The increased gravity was crushing her crops, and the changing atmospheric conditions were killing the bacteria that cleaned the air. Instead of abandoning the agricultural areas, she gathered her team for what she called an emergency adaptation session. The wheat is dying, but look at the root vegetables, she said, digging in soil that was being compressed by forces that should have made farming impossible. The potatoes are actually growing stronger. The increased pressure is making them more dense and nutritious. She began immediately selecting seeds from the plants that were surviving the new conditions. Within hours, she had identified 12 crop varieties that not only survived, but thrived under the increased gravity. "We're not losing our food supply," she reported. "We're improving it." The most dangerous situation was in the atmospheric processing plants. The bacterial cultures that converted the toxic atmosphere into breathable air were being killed by the pressure changes. Dr. Park So-jin should have been evacuating her team to areas with stored air. Instead, she led them deeper into the failing facilities. "The earth bacteria are dying," she admitted to her team as alarms wailed around them. "But look at these readings from the native atmospheric samples." She had discovered something remarkable. The planet's own atmosphere contained microorganisms that thrived under the new pressure conditions. They were different from Earth bacteria, but they processed atmospheric toxins in similar ways. "We're going to make friends with the local biology," Park announced. "If we can modify our processing systems to work with the native organisms, we'll have air processing that's better adapted to this planet than anything we brought from Earth." Her team worked for 12 straight hours, breathing through emergency masks while the air around them became increasingly toxic. They were essentially performing advanced biochemistry in conditions that should have forced immediate evacuation. But the most astonishing response came from the human children. Instead of showing fear or stress from the planetary crisis, the children adapted to the new conditions faster than the adults. 8-year-old Park Jin-woo was found playing a new game with his friends. They had learned to predict the new gravity patterns by listening to vibrations through the floor. "The deep rumbles come 53 seconds before the big spikes," Jin-woo explained to amazed adults. "The little buzzes mean the gravity is going to drop really low for a few minutes." Teacher Kim Hye-jin turned the crisis into a learning opportunity. Instead of keeping the children in safe areas, she organized adaptation classes where they learned to function under the new conditions. "We're teaching them that change isn't something to fear," she explained to the alien observers who questioned the wisdom of exposing children to such danger. "Change is something to master." The children began showing abilities that seemed almost supernatural to the watching aliens. They could sense gravity changes minutes before instruments detected them. They moved through the unstable environment with ease that made experienced engineers look clumsy. "They're not just adapting," reported Medical Officer Osera. "They're evolving. Their inner ear development is accelerating to handle the gravity changes. Their bone density is increasing daily. Their reflexes are becoming faster than we can measure." 18 hours after the crisis began, New Busan was still functioning. Buildings had been damaged, but the settlement hadn't been abandoned. Instead, the humans had adapted their operations to work with the new conditions. "Structural modifications complete," reported engineer Kim Do-woo. "The new building designs are actually stronger than the old ones. The increased gravity taught us some things about construction we didn't know before. Agricultural systems operating at 110% of previous efficiency," reported Choi Mi-young. "The new crop varieties are producing more food per plant than our Earth varieties. Atmospheric processing running better than ever," announced Dr. Park So-jin. "The native organisms are processing toxins faster and more completely than our imported bacteria." Commander Na Yunbi's final report summed up the human response. Planet attempted to increase difficulty level. Humans accepted the challenge and improved performance accordingly. Ambassador Zethrak watched the reports with growing amazement. "They should have evacuated. Any rational species would have evacuated. But they're not rational by our standards," replied observer Kethyan. "They appear to use crisis as a tool for improvement rather than a signal for retreat." The most disturbing report came from the Nith Allen observer, Whisperwind. "The human children are now showing capabilities that exceed their parents. They're not just surviving the hostile environment, they're becoming something new, something adapted to conditions that should be impossible for their species." When communication was restored with the human settlement, Ambassador Zethrak asked the question that had been haunting him. "Why didn't you evacuate? Why risk your people's lives for a settlement?" Captain Lee Hyun's response was simple. Because this is our home now. You don't abandon home when it gets difficult. You figure out how to make it work. He paused, then added words that would be quoted in alien academic papers for generations. Every world tries to break the species that live on it. The difference is that humans break back. By the end of the week, New Busan was not just running normally, it was running better than before. The crisis had forced innovations that made the settlement stronger, more efficient, and more adapted to their hostile world. The humans had turned a planetary catastrophe into an upgrade. The alien observers realized they weren't just watching a successful colonization. They were watching the birth of a new type of human, one that could thrive in conditions that would destroy most known life forms. And the most terrifying part was that the humans seemed to be enjoying it. 1 year after the first landing, New Busan was no longer just a settlement. It was a city. Admiral Song Young-min stepped off the transport ship Hope's Dawn and looked at what 40,000 humans had built on a world that 7 species had called impossible. Towering structures swayed gracefully with the gravity fluctuations, their surfaces gleaming with metals that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. Gardens filled with strange hybrid plants grew in the toxic soil, producing food that was more nutritious than anything grown on Earth. "Welcome to New Busan," said Captain Lee Hyun, greeting the Admiral at the landing platform. Around them, children played games that used the planet's dangerous conditions as playground equipment. They surfed gravity waves, raced through atmospheric storms, and climbed structures that flexed and bent with the planet's moods. "How many people now?" Admiral Song asked, watching a group of teenagers who were using controlled gravity spikes to help them lift construction materials that should have required heavy machinery. 53,000, Lee replied, with another 20,000 requesting transfer from Earth. "We have a waiting list that's growing faster than we can process applications." The Admiral's visit was official. The Galactic Council had requested a formal evaluation of human expansion into territories that other species considered uninhabitable. What they wanted to know was simple. Could humans really thrive in places that broke other civilizations? Or were they just lucky survivors who would eventually fail? The answer became clear within hours of the Admiral's arrival. Researcher Jeon Hye-jin presented her findings in the New Busan Cultural Center, a building that wouldn't have been possible on any other world. Its walls were made from crystalline, structures that formed only under the planet's unique gravity conditions. Its roof was designed to collect and channel the electrical energy from the constant lightning storms. "The second generation is showing capabilities that exceed our wildest projections," Jeon announced to an audience that included representatives from 12 different alien species. "Children born on New Busan are not just adapted to this environment. They're superior to baseline humans in almost every measurable way." She showed brain scans of children who had been born on the planet. Their neural development was accelerated. Their reaction times were faster than adult humans, and they showed intuitive understanding of complex environmental patterns that took adults months to learn. 10-year-old Min Jun can predict gravity fluctuations 47 minutes in advance, John explained. 12-year-old Su Young can navigate atmospheric storms that would ground our best pilots. They're not just surviving in this environment, they're becoming something new. Dr. Park So-jin's presentation on biological adaptation was even more startling. The humans of New Busan were changing in ways that seemed to violate the normal rules of evolution. "Bone density has increased an average of 40% in children born here," she reported. "Lung capacity is up 30%. Hand-eye coordination is improved by factors we're still measuring, but the most significant change is psychological." She showed data on stress responses and problem-solving abilities. Children raised on New Busan show no fear response to environmental challenges that would terrorize adults from stable worlds. They view extreme conditions as normal, and they've developed cognitive patterns optimized for rapid adaptation. The alien observers were most disturbed by the educational system. Teacher Kim Hye-jin gave them a tour of the schools where human children learned subjects that sounded like advanced military training to other species. "Today's lesson is emergency engineering," Kim announced to a class of 7-year-olds, who can tell me how to build a temporary shelter during a gravity storm using only local materials. Every hand in the room shot up. The children began discussing construction techniques that incorporated real-time adaptation to changing environmental conditions. They spoke casually about working with toxic materials, navigating dangerous terrain, and solving problems under extreme pressure. What we teach our children isn't survival skills, Kim explained to the visiting aliens. It's mastery skills. We don't want them to just survive this world. We want them to master it completely. The most shocking demonstration came when a real emergency occurred during the aliens' visit. A massive storm system approached the city, the kind that had destroyed previous settlements and forced the evacuation of entire alien colonies. Instead of taking shelter, the humans of New Busan prepared for what they called a storm party. Community leader Han Woo-jin explained the concept to the bewildered alien observers. The big storms bring the most valuable minerals to the surface. They also provide massive amounts of electrical energy. For us, storm season is harvest season. The storm approached, the city didn't shut down, it came alive. Work crews moved to designated positions to harvest materials that would be exposed by the storm's fury. Energy collection teams prepared to capture lightning strikes that would power the city for months. Children were given special assignments to monitor wind patterns and report on atmospheric conditions. "This is insane," transmitted crystalline observer Vexthai to her ship. "They're using a planetary catastrophe as a community event." But the humans' response worked perfectly. The storm that should have devastated the settlement instead provided resources and energy that accelerated their expansion. While the alien observers huddled in their ships, human families had picnics in storm shelters and turned the emergency into a celebration. Engineer Kim Do-woo used the storm to demonstrate New Busan's most impressive achievement. They had learned to work with the planet instead of against it. "Other species tried to impose their technology on this world," he explained as the storm raged outside. "We learned to let the world teach us its technology. Our buildings move with the gravity changes because the planet showed us how. Our energy systems harvest from the storms because the planet provided them. Our manufacturing uses local materials because the planet creates them." He showed the aliens factories that operated using principles that didn't exist on stable worlds. Gravity fluctuations were used to process materials in ways that conventional manufacturing couldn't achieve. Atmospheric pressure changes drove machinery that was more efficient than anything in the galactic database. Even the toxic chemistry of the planet was used to create new materials with properties that seemed impossible. "We're not just living on this world," Kim said. "We're learning from it." The final revelation came from Medical Officer Oh Se-ra's long-term health studies. The humans of New Busan weren't just healthier than baseline humans. They were healthier than any known intelligent species. "Life expectancy has increased," she reported. "Disease resistance is up dramatically. Cognitive function is enhanced. Physical capabilities exceed Earth normal in every category. The hostile environment isn't harming them. It's making them stronger." She showed comparative data between humans born on stable worlds and those born on New Busan. The difference was startling. New Busan humans showed abilities that bordered on what other species would consider superhuman. The children can function in environmental conditions that would quickly kill unprotected aliens, Oh explained. Their bodies have adapted to process toxins, survive pressure changes, and function in gravitational fields that would disorient most species. Admiral Song's final report to Earth was brief, but profound. New Busan is not just a successful colony. It's proof that humans can take worlds that destroy other species and turn them into places that make us stronger. Request immediate authorization for expansion to 12 additional hostile worlds that have been classified as uninhabitable. The request was approved within days. Ambassador Zethrak's final transmission to the Galactic Council became one of the most studied documents in alien academia. "We have observed humans for one full cycle on a world that claimed 7 civilizations. Our conclusion: humans do not conquer worlds despite their hostility. They conquer worlds because of their hostility. They are a species that requires challenge to reach their full potential. Stable, safe worlds produce weak humans. Dangerous worlds produce superior humans." He paused in his transmission. watching New Busan's lights twinkle against the planet's angry storms. We recommend that all species observe human expansion with great interest and great respect. They may be the first species we have encountered that become stronger through adversity rather than weaker. They do not avoid death worlds. They seek them out. And each generation born on these hostile worlds surpasses the previous generation in capabilities. His final words would be quoted for generations. We asked why humans conquer what breaks worlds. The answer is simple. Because broken worlds don't break humans. They forge them into something stronger. Captain Lee Hyun stood on the observation deck of New Busan's central tower, watching children play in conditions that would terrify most intelligent species. Below him, a city of 50,000 humans thrived in a place where others had found only death. When a reporter asked him why humans chose impossible worlds, his answer was simple. Because our children deserve to grow up stronger than we did. Because easy worlds don't teach you anything important. Because someone has to prove that there's no such thing as impossible, only difficult, and humans are very good at difficult.